The signal came at 3 in the morning, ship time. Lieutenant Commander Amy Torres was alone in the communications room when her console lit up with a pattern she had never seen before. She sat up straight and put her coffee down. The signal was old, not old in the way a message from last week was old. It was old in its format, using a galactic standard distress code that most species had stopped using decades ago. Someone was desperate. Amy ran the signal through the translation systems and felt her stomach drop. The message was from the Rhinari Collective, the same Rhinari who had stood before the Galactic Assembly just 2 years ago and called humanity a species of violent children, the same Rhinari who had voted against Earth joining the Assembly, saying humans were too dangerous and too primitive to be trusted among civilized peoples. Now they were screaming for help. Amy reached for the internal communication panel. Admiral Cole to the bridge, Priority 1. Admiral Catherine Cole arrived 8 minutes later. She was 53 years old with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had commanded ships during the Solar Wars, when human fought human across the void between planets. Those wars had ended 15 years ago. But the lessons remained carved into her mind. "Show me," she said. Amy played the message. A Rhinari voice filled the room, speaking in rapid bursts. The translation appeared on screen. Colony World Thessar 4 under attack. Kethvor swarm. Hundreds of ships. Defenses failing. 200,000 civilians. Request immediate assistance from any vessel. The message repeated, then repeated again. It had been broadcasting for 6 hours. Captain Daniel Shaw entered the bridge next. He was younger than the Admiral, with broad shoulders and a face that rarely smiled. He read the message, and his jaw tightened. "The Rhinari," he said. "They have some nerve asking us for help." "They are not asking us specifically," Amy said. "This is a general distress call. They sent it to everyone. Any marked a D to C. On God respectivize 71, and how many have answered?" Admiral Cole asked. Amy checked her data. "None, Admiral." The Velith Empire logged the signal, but declared the distance too great. The Korath Federation stated they could not spare ships. The Morthani said the Kethvor were not their problem. "So everyone heard them dying and decided it was not worth the trouble," Shaw said. Admiral Cole stood very still. She looked at the star map on the main screen. Thessar 4 was 3 days away at maximum speed. The Kethvor swarm was a nightmare that most species only whispered about. They were insectoid creatures that moved from system to system, consuming everything in their path. They did not negotiate. They did not take prisoners. They simply fed. "How many ships do we have?" she asked. 17, Admiral. The full 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. "And the Kethvor?" Amy swallowed. "Early estimates suggest 300 attack vessels. Maybe more." Shaw stepped forward. "Admiral, with respect, those odds are suicide. We would be throwing away 17 ships and 10,000 lives for people who hate us. They do not hate us, Captain. They fear us. There is a difference. Does that difference matter when we are outnumbered 20 to 1? Admiral Cole did not answer immediately. She walked to the observation window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 200,000 people were huddled in shelters, listening to the sounds of their world being torn apart. Children were crying for their parents. Parents were praying to gods who did not seem to be listening, and no one was coming. "I grew up on Mars," she said quietly. "During the Colonial Rebellion, I was 9 years old when the Separatists bombed our dome. The air started leaking out. My mother put me in a closet and sealed the door to save me. I sat in that closet for 11 hours, listening to people die, waiting for help that I was not sure would ever come." She turned to face her officers. Help came. A ship from Earth, crewed by people who had every reason to let us die. Mars had been fighting for independence from Earth for years. We had called them tyrants and oppressors. But when our dome broke, they came anyway. They saved 400 people that day. They saved me. The bridge was silent. "I will not let those people die alone," Admiral Cole said. "I cannot force any of you to come with me. This is not an order, but I am going to Thessar 4. And I am going to fight." Captain Shaw looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. If you are going, Admiral, then the Valiant goes with you. One by one, the other ship commanders responded. The Defiant, the Resolution, the Steadfast, the Courage. 17 voices, all saying the same thing. We are with you. Admiral Cole felt something warm in her chest. Pride, perhaps. Or maybe, just the simple knowledge that she served with good people. Lieutenant Commander Torres, open a channel to Thesser 4. Amy's fingers moved across her console. Channel open. Admiral. Cole took a breath. Attention Rhinari Colony Thessar 4. This is Admiral Catherine Cole of the United Earth ship Valiant, commanding the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. We have received your distress call. 17 warships are en route to your position. Estimated arrival time is 72 hours. Hold your defenses. Protect your people. She paused, then added 5 words that would echo across the galaxy. Help is coming. Hold on. She closed the channel and turned to her crew. Set course for Thesser 4. Maximum speed. All ships. The fleet turned as one. 17 vessels, each one carrying hundreds of humans who had volunteered to fly into the darkness and fight an enemy they had never seen. They did not do it for glory. They did not do it for reward. They did it because someone had called for help and they were close enough to answer. In the communications room, Amy Torres watched the stars blur as the ship jumped to faster-than-light speed. She thought about the Rhinari, who had called humans violent and dangerous. She thought about the Kethvor, who had never lost a battle. She thought about what would happen when those two facts collided. 3 days. In 3 days, the galaxy would learn what humanity was truly capable of. Amy smiled and returned to her station. There was work to do. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Thessar system. What they saw made even the veterans go quiet. The planet hung in space like a wounded animal. Fires burned across its surface, visible even from orbit. Around it, hundreds of dark shapes moved in swirling patterns. The Kethvor swarm, their ships looked like insects, all sharp angles and twitching antennae. They moved without formation, without order, driven by a hunger that had no end. Between the swarm and the planet, a thin line of Rhinari ships held position. There were maybe 20 of them left. They were damaged and dying, but they had not run. They could not run. Behind them were 200,000 of their people. My God, Captain Shaw whispered. How long have they been holding? Amy Torres checked the data coming through her console. 6 days, Captain. They have been fighting for 6 days without relief. Admiral Cole studied the tactical display. The Rhinari ships were almost out of ammunition. Their shields were failing. In a few more hours, the swarm would break through, and then nothing would stand between the Kethvor and the colony. Open a channel to the Rhinari commander, she ordered. The screen flickered, and a face appeared. It was a Rhinari, tall and thin with pale blue skin and eyes that had not slept in days. His uniform was torn. There was blood on his collar. I am Commander Silix of the Rhinari Defense Force, he said. His voice was hoarse. I do not understand. Our sensors show human vessels. This must be an error. No error, Commander. I am Admiral Catherine Cole. We received your distress call. We are here to help. Silix stared at her. For a moment, he could not speak. You came. You actually came. After everything we said about your species. After the way we treated you at the assembly. That does not matter right now. What matters is those people on the surface. How many are left? 190,000 civilians. We lost 10,000 in the first attacks before we could get them underground. The shelters are holding, but the Kethvor have begun landing ground forces. If they breach the shelters. He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. How many ships do you have left? 18 combat ready, another 12 too damaged to fight but still able to move. Then we have 35 ships against 300. I have seen worse odds. Silix almost laughed. Admiral, with respect, no one has seen worse odds. The Kethvor do not lose. They have destroyed 12 civilizations. They do not know how to retreat. They will keep coming until we are all dead. Then we will have to teach them something new. A new voice cut into the channel. It was deeper, older, and filled with a pride that even exhaustion could not hide. This is High Coordinator Vethal, of the Renari Collective. I am aboard the command ship, Eternal Light. Admiral Cole, I must speak with you. Cole nodded. I am listening, High Coordinator. Vethal appeared on screen. He was older than Celix, with ceremonial robes that looked out of place on a warship. This was the same leader who had stood before the Galactic Assembly and called humans a plague upon the stars. Now his eyes were red from crying. I do not understand why you came, he said. We gave you no reason to help us. We tried to keep your species isolated. We told the galaxy you were monsters. You were afraid of us, Cole replied. I understand fear. It makes people say and do things they would not otherwise do. And yet you came anyway. Why? Admiral Cole considered her answer carefully. In the background, she could hear the distant rumble of HFY weapons firing at the Renari line. Time was running out. Because someone had to, she said simply. Because your children are hiding underground, waiting to find out if they are going to live or die. Because you called for help and no one else answered. That is enough reason for me. Vethal was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. The pride was gone. In its place was something that might have been shame, or might have been hope. What do you need from us, Admiral? I need your ships to fall back and protect the planet. Form a tight defensive ring around the evacuation zones. Do not engage the swarm directly. Let us handle that. You want us to hide behind you? I want you to protect your people. That is why you are here. Let my fleet do what we were built to do. Commander Celix spoke up. Admiral, the HFY outnumber you by more than 10 to 1. Your ships will be torn apart. Maybe. But we will take a lot of them with us. And every HFY ship we destroy is one less ship attacking your colony. Captain Shaw stepped forward. Admiral, the fleet is in position. All ships report ready for combat. Cole nodded. She looked at the tactical display one more time. 300 enemy ships. 17 human vessels. The math was simple. The math said they should run. But humans had never been very good at math. All ships. This is Admiral Cole. We did not come here to run. We did not come here to hide. We came here to fight. The HFY have never faced a species like us. They have never met humans. Today, they learn what that means. She took a breath. Attack formation Delta. All ships advance. Target their command vessels first. Hit them hard. Hit them fast. And do not stop until they break or we do. For Earth. For the Renari. For everyone who ever called for help and was answered. The fleet surged forward. 17 ships against 300. It should have been slaughter. The HFY certainly thought so. They turned to face this new threat, expecting easy prey. They had crushed every species they had ever encountered. Humans would be no different. They were wrong. The first volley of human missiles tore through the swarm's outer line. Explosions lit up the void. HFY ships broke apart, their crews dying before they understood what was happening. Commander Celix watched from his damaged bridge. His mouth hung open. They are not slowing down. They are not even trying to maintain distance. They are flying directly into the swarm. High Coordinator Vethal stood beside him, watching the human fleet charge into certain death. What kind of species does this? He whispered. On the Valiant, Admiral Cole watched her tactical display with calm eyes. Ships were dying. Human ships. Her people. But for every human ship that fell, dozens of HFY vessels went with them. The kind that remembers what it is like to be alone, she said to no one. The kind that refuses to let anyone else feel that way. The battle for Thessar 4 had begun. Space burned. The human fleet tore into the HFY swarm like a blade through water. Where other species fought at distance, keeping their ships safe behind walls of defensive fire, humans did the opposite. They dove straight into the enemy formation, so close that the Kethvor could not use their superior numbers. Captain Shaw stood on the bridge of the Valiant as the ship shook from another impact. Warning lights flashed across every console. The shields were failing. The hull was cracking. None of it mattered. "Target their command ship," he ordered. "Full power to forward weapons." The Valiant fired. A beam of white light cut through the darkness and struck a Kethvor cruiser in its center. The alien ship broke in half, spilling bodies and wreckage into the void. Direct hit. Target destroyed. Find the next one. This was human warfare. Not careful, not safe, just relentless, grinding pressure that never stopped. Across the battlefield, the other human ships fought with the same ferocity. The UES Defiant had lost its main engines but continued firing from a dead drift. The UES Courage had rammed a Kethvor carrier, destroying both ships in a ball of fire. The crew had evacuated just in time. Their escape pods picked up by sister ships that never stopped moving. Admiral Cole watched it all from her command chair. Her face showed no fear. She had known this would happen. She had known people would die. The only question was whether their deaths would mean something. So far, they meant a great deal. "Swarm losses at 47 ships," Amy Torres reported. 48, 49. "They are falling back from the main engagement zone. They are regrouping," Cole said. "Finding a new approach. The Kethvor are not stupid. They just have never faced anything like this before." On the Rhinari command ship, Commander Silix watched the battle with growing disbelief. Human ships moved through the swarm like predators through a school of fish. They did not hesitate. They did not retreat. When one ship was destroyed, the others simply closed the gap and kept fighting. "This is impossible," he said. "No species fights like this. No species survives fighting like this." High Coordinator Vethal stood beside him, his hands trembling. "They are not trying to survive. They are trying to win. There is a difference. At what cost? At any cost, apparently." The swarm attacked again. This time they came from multiple directions, trying to overwhelm the human ships with sheer numbers. For a moment, it seemed to work. The Valiant took 3 direct hits. The Resolution lost its weapons array. The Steadfast reported critical damage to its reactor. But the humans kept fighting. Sergeant Nathan Price sat in the Marine bay of the Valiant, waiting for orders that he knew were coming. Around him, 200 soldiers checked their weapons and armor. They were not afraid. They had trained for this their entire lives. The intercom crackled. "Marine teams, prepare for boarding action. We are taking the fight to them." Price smiled. This was the part he had been waiting for. Human dropships launched from the Valiant and 3 other carriers. They punched through the chaos of battle, taking fire from all directions. 2 were destroyed before they reached their targets. The others made it through. Price felt the impact as his dropship crashed into the side of a Kethvor command vessel. The hull breached. Air rushed out. Then the Marines were moving, pouring into the alien ship with weapons blazing. The Kethvor were not prepared for this. No species had ever tried to board their ships before. Why would they? The Kethvor were terrifying up close, all claws and mandibles and armored shells. They were built for close combat. So were humans. The battle inside the ship was brutal and short. Kethvor warriors swarmed the corridors, clicking and screaming in their strange language. Human rifles answered with thunder. Bodies fell. Blood, both red and black, painted the walls. Price lost 3 of his squad in the first minute. He kept moving. There was no time to mourn. Not yet. They reached the command center. Inside, the Kethvor ship commander waited, surrounded by guards. It was larger than the others, with extra limbs and eyes that burned with intelligence. "You cannot win," it hissed in broken common speech. "We are endless. We are hunger. You are nothing." "We are human," Price replied, "and you are in our way." He fired. Outside, the effect was immediate. Without its command ship, an entire section of the swarm fell into chaos. Ships began flying in random patterns, crashing into each other, unable to coordinate their attacks. Admiral Cole saw the opening. All ships, concentrate fire on the disorganized sector. Push through to the Queen. The Queen. Every Kethvor swarm had one. She was the heart of their hive mind, the central intelligence that guided all her children. Kill the Queen, and the swarm would scatter. But the Queen was protected by her strongest ships. Getting to her would cost more lives, more ships, more sacrifice. Cole made the only decision she could. Forward, all vessels. We end this now. The human fleet charged. On the Valiant, Captain Shaw felt something hit his shoulder. He looked down and saw blood spreading across his uniform. A piece of shrapnel from an exploded console had caught him. He grabbed a piece of cloth, pressed it against the wound, and stayed at his post. "Captain, you need medical attention," Amy Torres said. "Later. We have a battle to win." The Valiant led the charge toward the Queen's ship. It was massive, 3 times the size of any human vessel, covered in weapons and armor. Around it, the remaining Kethvor ships formed a desperate defensive wall. They were not enough. Human missiles tore through the defenders. Human ships crashed through the gaps, firing everything they had. The Queen's shields flickered, failed, and collapsed. For the first time in the swarm's history, the Queen felt something she had never experienced before. Fear. "They are breaking," Admiral Cole said quietly. "All ships, finish it." The final volley struck the Queen's vessel in a dozen places. It cracked open like an egg, spilling fire and debris into space. The Queen died screaming, and with her died the coordination of the entire swarm. The remaining Kethvor ships stopped fighting. They drifted aimlessly, their pilots suddenly cut off from the hive mind that had guided them since birth. Some tried to flee, others simply shut down, their crews curling into balls and waiting for death. The battle was over. Admiral Cole slumped in her chair. Around her, the bridge crew began to cheer, but she did not join them. She was looking at the tactical display, counting the ships that were no longer there. 4 human vessels destroyed, over 2,000 dead, the price of victory. But the colony was safe. 190,000 Renari would live because humans had refused to let them die. Commander Silix's voice came through the communication channel. It was shaking. "Admiral Cole, the swarm is broken. You did it. You actually did it." Cole closed her eyes. "We did it together, Commander. Now let us finish saving your people." On the planet below, the ground battle was still raging. But now, without the swarm's coordination, the Kethvor ground forces would soon falter. It was time to end this. The underground shelters of Thesser 4 were never meant to hold this many people. Elder Mora walked through the crowded tunnels, stepping over sleeping children and exhausted parents. The air was thick and hot. The lights flickered every few minutes as another explosion shook the surface above. 6 days of this. 6 days of hiding in the dark, listening to their world die. She was 230 years old. She had seen wars before. She had seen plagues and famines and natural disasters, but she had never seen anything like the Kethvor. They did not negotiate. They did not make demands. They simply consumed. Every hour, their ground forces pushed closer to the shelter entrances. The Renari defenders fought back, but they were running out of soldiers and ammunition. It was only a matter of time. Elder Mora. A young aide ran up to her, breathing hard. "There is news from orbit. The human fleet has arrived. They are fighting the swarm." "Humans?" Mora stopped walking. "The humans came?" "Yes, Elder. 17 warships. They are engaging the enemy now." Mora did not know what to feel. The humans. The same species her government had tried to exclude from galactic society. The same species they had called dangerous and untrustworthy. Those humans had come to save them. "What kind of people are they?" she whispered to herself. The ground shook again, harder this time. Dust fell from the ceiling. Somewhere nearby, a child started crying. Then the communication system crackled with a new voice. A human voice. "Attention Thessar 4 surface. This is Sergeant Nathan Price of the United Earth Marines. We are beginning atmospheric insertion. Hold your positions." We are coming to you. The shelters went silent. Every Renari who heard the message stopped what they were doing. They looked at each other with wide eyes, afraid to hope, afraid to believe. Mora found her voice. This is Elder Mora, civilian authority for the Thesser shelters. Sergeant, the Keth Vor have breached our outer defenses. They are less than 1 kilometer from the main shelter entrance. We cannot hold much longer. Understood, Elder. We will be on the ground in 6 minutes. Just keep them busy until then. 6 minutes. It sounded like forever. High above the planet, dropships launched from the surviving human vessels. They dove through the atmosphere, their hulls glowing red from the heat of entry. Keth Vor air defenses opened fire, filling the sky with death. 3 dropships exploded. 4, 5, but the others made it through. Sergeant Price felt the impact as his ship hit the ground hard. The doors blew open, and he was running before his boots touched dirt. Around him, Marines poured out of the wreckage, forming into combat units without needing orders. The landscape was a nightmare. Burning buildings, craters filled with bodies. Keth Vor warriors crawling across the ruins like insects, their mandibles clicking with anticipation. Contact front, someone shouted. Heavy resistance at the shelter entrance. Price raised his rifle. Push through. We did not come this far to stop now. The Marines attacked. It was different from the space battle. In space, death came fast and clean. On the ground, it was slow and ugly. Humans and Keth Vor fought hand to hand in the rubble, killing each other with whatever they could find. Rifles, knives, bare hands. Price saw a Marine get pulled down by 3 Keth Vor warriors. He saw another Marine charge into a group of enemies with a grenade in each hand. He saw acts of courage that would have seemed impossible if he had not witnessed them himself. They reached the shelter entrance in 4 minutes. The Rhinari defenders were down to their last ammunition. Their commander, a young officer with a broken arm, looked at the humans with tears in his eyes. You came, he said. You actually came. Save it for later, Price replied. Where are the civilians? 300 meters down. The main chamber holds 80,000. The others are spread through the tunnel network. We will hold the entrance. Get your wounded inside. Tell your people to stay calm. This will be over soon. The Renari officer nodded and disappeared into the tunnels. Price turned back to face the enemy. The Keth Vor were coming. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. Streaming over the rubble toward the shelter entrance. They knew the prize was close. They could smell the fear of the civilians hiding underground. Form a perimeter, Price ordered. Nothing gets past us. Nothing. The Marines spread out. They had maybe 200 soldiers. The Keth Vor had 10 times that number. The math was simple. But humans had never been good at accepting simple math. The first wave hit like a wall of claws and teeth. Marines fell. Keth Vor fell. The line bent but did not break. Price fired until his rifle overheated, then drew his pistol. When that ran empty, he picked up a fallen Keth Vor blade and kept fighting. Inside the shelter, Elder Mora listened to the sounds of battle. She could hear human voices shouting orders, defiance, sometimes pain. She could hear the clicking screams of the Keth Vor as they threw themselves against the human line. A young Renari child tugged at her robe. He was maybe 5 years old, with large eyes that had seen too much horror in his short life. Elder, who are those people fighting up there? Mora knelt down to look at him. They are humans, child. Why did they come? My parents said humans were bad. Mora thought about her answer. A week ago, she would have agreed with the child's parents. Humans were violent. Humans were dangerous. Humans could not be trusted, but violent, dangerous, untrustworthy people did not fly across the galaxy to die for strangers. I think we were wrong about them, she said softly. I think they came because we needed help. And that was enough reason for them. The child considered this. They must be very brave. Yes, I think they are. Above ground, the battle continued. The Marines held the entrance for 37 minutes. In that time, they killed over 800 Keth Vor warriors. They lost 93 of their own. Sergeant Price took a wound to his leg in the second hour. He wrapped it with a piece of his uniform and kept fighting. He took another wound to his arm in the 3rd hour. He switched his weapon to his other hand and kept fighting. He would not stop. None of them would stop. Because behind them, in the tunnels, children were sleeping and parents were praying, and an entire species was depending on them. When the HFY finally broke, it happened suddenly. The death of the queen in orbit cut through their hive mind like a knife. One moment they were fighting with mindless fury. The next moment they simply stopped. The surviving HFY stood frozen in the rubble, their eyes empty, their claws lowered. Without the queen to guide them, they did not know what to do. They did not know how to exist. "They are done," Price said. His voice was barely a whisper. "It is over." He sat down in the dirt and looked at the sky. Human ships were descending through the clouds. Medical vessels, rescue teams. The cavalry had arrived. In the shelter below, Elder Mora heard the silence. For a moment, she was afraid to believe it. Then cheering erupted from somewhere deeper in the tunnels. The sound spread like wildfire. They were saved. Mora walked up the tunnel toward the entrance. She needed to see. She needed to know. She emerged into daylight and stopped. Human soldiers sat in the rubble, exhausted and bleeding. They were surrounded by the bodies of fallen HFY, piled 3 deep in some places. Medical teams were already moving among the wounded, both human and Rhinari. A human soldier looked up at her. He was young, with blood on his face and pain in his eyes. But he managed a small smile. "Are you Elder Mora?" he asked. "Yes. Your people are safe, ma'am. We held the line." Mora felt tears running down her face. She could not stop them. She did not want to stop them. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you come? Why did you fight so hard for us?" The soldier thought about it. Then he shrugged, as if the answer was obvious. "Because you asked." 3 days after the battle, the survivors gathered on the surface of Thessar 4. The Rhinari had cleared a space among the ruins for the ceremony. It was not much. Just a flat piece of ground surrounded by broken buildings and burned trees. But it was enough. It had to be enough. Admiral Catherine Cole stood at the front of the human delegation. Her uniform was clean, but her eyes showed the weight of everything that had happened. Behind her stood the surviving officers and crew of the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. There were fewer of them than there should have been. 4 ships, 2,137 lives. That was the price of victory. Across the clearing, High Coordinator Vethal led the Rhinari survivors. He walked slowly, leaning on a cane that he had not needed a week ago. The war had aged him in ways that time alone could not. When the 2 groups met in the center, there was a long moment of silence. Neither side knew quite what to say. Vethal spoke first. "Admiral Cole, on behalf of the Rhinari Collective, I owe you an apology that words cannot express." His voice was rough with emotion. 2 years ago, I stood before the Galactic Assembly and called your species a threat to civilization. I said you were violent, dangerous, and unworthy of our trust. I was wrong. I was so terribly wrong. Cole shook her head. "High Coordinator, you were not entirely wrong. Humans are violent. We have spent most of our history fighting each other. We have done terrible things in the name of survival, of power, of ideas that seemed important at the time. Then why did you come? Why did you risk everything for people who had treated you with nothing but contempt?" End quote. Cole thought about the question. Around her, the wind carried the smell of smoke and blood. In the distance, rescue ships were still ferrying supplies to the survivors. Life was returning to Thessar 4, slowly but surely. "Because we remember what it feels like to be alone," she said finally. "Long before we reached the stars, humans faced extinction many times. Ice ages, plagues, wars that nearly destroyed us. And in those dark moments, the thing that kept us alive was not our strength or our weapons. It was each other. The knowledge that someone would come, someone would help, someone would answer when we called." She looked at Vethal with tired but steady eyes. "You called for help. We were close enough to answer. It was as simple as that." Vethal bowed his head. When he raised it again, There were tears on his face. Then let me say this clearly, so that there can be no misunderstanding. The Renari Collective will support humanity's full membership in the Galactic Assembly. We will stand beside you as allies and as friends, and we will never forget what you did here. Cole extended her hand. After a moment, Vethal took it. The Rhinari watching the ceremony began to cheer. The humans joined them. For a brief moment, the differences between the two species did not matter. They were just people who had survived something terrible together. Later that day, Admiral Cole visited the medical ward where Captain Shaw was recovering. He was sitting up in bed, his shoulder wrapped in bandages, looking annoyed at being forced to rest. "Admiral," he said, "I heard the ceremony went well." It did. The Rhinari are already talking about building a memorial. They want to include the names of every human who died here. Shaw nodded slowly. "That is more than I expected from them. People can surprise you, Captain. Even people you think you understand." She sat down in the chair beside his bed. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was comfortable, the kind that existed between people who had been through too much together. "Was it worth it?" Shaw asked quietly. 4 ships, over 2,000 dead, for people who did not even want us in their part of space. Cole considered the question. She thought about the faces of the dead, the families that would never see their loved ones again, the ships that would never return to Earth. Then she thought about Elder Mora, standing in the rubble with tears streaming down her face, asking why they had come. She thought about the children in the shelters, alive because humans had refused to let them die. She thought about the message that was already spreading across the galaxy. When you call for help, humans will answer. "Yes," she said. "It was worth it. Because next time someone is in trouble, they will know they are not alone. They will know that someone out there cares enough to fight for them, and that knowledge, that hope, is worth more than we can measure." Shaw looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. "Just a little. You always were too idealistic, Admiral. And you always were too practical, Captain. That is why we make a good team." In the communications room of the Valiant, Amy Torres was receiving transmissions from across the sector. She had been at her station for 18 hours, but she could not bring herself to leave. The messages kept coming. A mining colony on the edge of explored space, asking if the rumors were true. A small trading vessel that had witnessed the battle from a safe distance, spreading the story to everyone who would listen. A species called the Velith, who had ignored the Renari's distress call, now asking if humanity would consider a diplomatic relationship, and more. So many more. "Lieutenant Commander Torres." Admiral Cole's voice came through the intercom. "I need you on the bridge." Amy walked to the bridge with tired legs and a racing heart. When she arrived, the Admiral was standing at the main display, looking at a map of the galaxy. "We have received 17 new distress calls in the last 6 hours, Cole said. "Colony worlds, trading posts, research stations. Some are real emergencies, others are just people who want to know if we are real." 17 calls, Admiral. "We only have 13 ships left." "I know." Cole turned to face her crew. They were exhausted, wounded, grief-stricken. They had given everything they had. But when she looked in their eyes, she did not see defeat. She saw readiness. "We cannot answer all of them," she continued. "Not with what we have. But we can answer some. We can show the galaxy that humans keep their promises. That when we say we will come, we mean it." She straightened her shoulders. "Set course for the nearest distress call. Signal the fleet. We have work to do." The surviving ships of the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet turned toward the stars. 13 vessels, battered and scarred but still fighting, still serving, still answering the call. On Thessar 4, Elder Mora watched the human fleet depart. Beside her stood Sergeant Price, his leg wrapped in bandages but his spirit unbroken. He had refused evacuation, choosing instead to help with the recovery efforts on the surface. "They are leaving," Mora said. "After everything they did for us, they just leave?" "They are not leaving, Elder. They are going to help someone else." Mora shook her head in wonder. "Is this what humans do?" You save one world, and then immediately go save another? Price smiled, a tired expression that somehow still held warmth. Yes, ma'am. That is exactly what we do. Mora watched until the ships disappeared from view. Then she turned and walked back toward the rebuilding effort. There was so much work to do. So many lives to put back together. But for the first time in weeks, she felt hope. The galaxy had believed that humans were too violent, too dangerous, too wild to be trusted. They had looked at humanity's history of war and conflict and seen only destruction. They had missed the most important truth. Humans did not fight because they loved violence. They fought because they remembered what it felt like to be small and scared and alone in the universe. They fought because they had sworn, somewhere deep in their collective soul, that no one else would ever have to feel that way. And now the galaxy knew. When you called for help, humans would answer. No matter the distance. No matter the cost. No matter who was asking, because that was what humans did. That was what humans had always done. The stars burned cold and distant in the void. But somewhere out there, ships were flying toward danger, carrying men and women who had chosen to serve something greater than themselves. And the galaxy would never be quite the same again.